Welcome to episode 90 of the Worldbuilders Anvil. Today's episode topic, what books we recommend you read as a world builder.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the Worldbuilders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. All right, welcome back. As always, I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
And today I'm here with Michael Miller. Excellent. This is an unusual treat for the show. We are very excited.
What now?
I don't know.
I mean, I think anytime I'm president's a treat, but I've been here for 11 episodes now.
Oh, I guess that really isn't new then, is it?
No, at this point, no. I think I'm welcome to old hat.
Welcome to old hat. Yes, which is much more true. And like you're saying, today's topic will be books. And
I think you're going to knock that pile over.
Yes, I have a pile of books. It's called my show notes. This is the show notes.
Don't do that. You're going to make noise on the mic because it's a big stack.
It's a big stack of books. And essentially, I got a question from, and I'm going to slaughter your name, and I apologize completely, Joao Nescamito.
There's a middle name, middle initial E there.
Yes, with the E there. Sent me a message on Facebook asking, so Joao wrote in a question to the show on the Facebook page, and he asked, because he had been reading or listening to an audio version of the Ribbons Codex by David Eddings, and he read that David did not read fantasy books because he wanted to avoid cross-contamination.
Which is the same thing that you've talked about in prior episodes for the novel that you're releasing later this year.
Yes. I also do not read fantasy when I'm writing fantasy. In general, I don't read too much fantasy anymore. I do read fiction, but not fantasy. And just the
so like what, like a historical fiction or science fiction?
Historical fiction, more literature.
Okay.
Like things that are really, really good.
So romance novels.
That's what my grandmother called them that, yes. And we're joined today with by Ra, the Queen of Cheese. She might be piping in.
I was actually going to apologize in case you hear anything odd in the next little while. Ra has jumped on the table.
She has invaded the room or the studio.
In the studio.
I mean,
when Sarah and I were recording, Phoebe would frequently hop up on the table and sometimes play with the microphone. So you'd occasionally hear her meow, or she wouldn't bat it, but a lot of times she'd lay down right next to the microphone. So
Kristen's goal is to catch her recorded. So we'd appreciate if she did record for us a little bit.
I don't hear her very often. She's a very quiet cat.
Usually it's when she wants something and she'll give a very squeaky meow. But she will.
Most of your cats are pretty quiet.
Yes.
All right. So Joao writes in, talking about cross-contamination. What was the other thing he was reading or listening to?
It was called the Ribbons Codex by David Eddings.
Okay.
And that was the person who he first heard it from, so he asked me the same question, and I said, no, I also do not. But he's like, well, what are some suggestions of some books that you should read? And some of the types of books I look at, I kind of break them down to a couple categories. To be honest, they're all about world building, but from the aspect of learning more about the way our world works. So I look at books about languages, about cultures, about art, architecture. And I guess some examples of all those books of economics. I read way too many stuff like that. And as I was saying to Mike just a few minutes earlier.
Michael.
Well, I was talking to Mike before you came in. And I was also telling you, just right here on the show, yeah. I was saying I also read literature. I think that's a very important thing as well. Books that are written really well just to experience them and hopefully to make myself a better writer. Because I just saw R.A. Salvador, who we were talking about, his somewhat famous character of Drizzt. And he was at the Mark Twain House here in Windsor, Connecticut. Actually, the Mark Twain House is in Hartford, Connecticut. And he was saying that he thinks reading literature is the best way to learn to write. Not creative writing classes, no writing classes. He says between online and like just writing with people, that's where that will evolve. But he's like reading great literature was also his suggestion too.
It's funny because everything that you're saying, right? When I sat down to try to think about this episode, those things immediately came to mind. Part of me feels like there's no wrong to what you read,
yes.
But if you're reading something that's real, all that can do is help benefit you because you're helping to understand the real world.
Exactly.
Biology, chemistry, history, basically anything you're going to get from a school textbook is going to add to your understanding of the world and then subsequently how you plan to build your own.
Exactly. And a lot of great literature is really about people. And people's the most important thing to really know about the world and how people treat each other, how they portray each other, how they love each other, how they kiss. Wait, we're back to the romance novels that you read.
What's JD? Who's the one that there's a big one? Stuart Stout? I don't know. There's one. She's a big she or he. I think it's a she. Romance novel, and I have my friend Danielle. She loves her. Like she's
Danielle.
Well,
my grandmother used to read Danielle Steele all the time. So
it's not Danielle Steele. It's definitely like JD something or other, and she's got this whole series and this, my friend Danielle, she's a super smart girl, like really, really smart, very, very, intelligent girl. So when I saw all these romance novels on her bookshelf, I'm like, what is this crap? I'm like, are these your mom's? And she's like, no, those are mine. I love those books. I'm like, really? And she's like, no kidding. They are entertaining. She's like, they're fun. They're well written. She's like, give them a try. So I did get one. I didn't finish it. I got about halfway through it, and then I picked up something else. But what I was reading, I was enjoying. It was a good read. It wasn't
your style of book, but
it's not anything I would gravitate towards instinctually. But I would read it. Like, it was good. Like, what I was reading was entertaining. It was well written. There was a mystery aspect to it. So, like, I was enjoying that part of the story too. So,
well, probably best you couldn't go through your internet history.
It's probably best nobody can go through my internet history. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm sure tons of people can, but I hope nobody does. Tell us a little bit about this massive stack of books. I really think that middle of the stack is precariously balanced. You're going to lose that one right there. I feel like the top of the whole stack is going to fall. For
sound effects as we go.
Okay, fair enough.
But okay, I'm just kind of go down in order, and there's something I want to talk about. And the first couple are going to be kind of about languages.
And I just want to say, we record at Jeff's house, so he has the unfair advantage of having his bookshelf in the very room that we're recording in. So for every book that Jeff mentions that's in this stack of his, I want you to realize that I have a thicker, more expensive version of a better book.
Fair enough. Excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest for everyone, especially if you want to develop writing systems, is a dictionary of symbols. And I have one here. It's just called Dictionary of Symbols from Carl J. Lugman.
I don't know that I would have remembered that, but I have a book just like that at home. It's not the same one. It's a different book. Like I said, I
have one more over there.
Like I said, it's thicker and more expensive, so and better.
And probably less coffee stains.
Probably, yeah. Yours looks like you spilled half a cup of coffee on it.
It went in my book bag, and I have a tendency to throw my coffee cup in there.
There you go.
And so this one has been well used. And the reason they're important there are some symbols that are universal that seem to show up over and over again.
Circles,
dots. The dot is probably the oldest symbol on Earth.
The first symbol.
I'm making that up. I don't know, but
I would have ran with it because I haven't heard that before. But I'm just like, could it? Yep, sure. Why not? It's the first mark you could make.
I know it's ancient, so it could be.
Triangle is a big one.
But it'll give you ideas of the symbols. It'll make you think somewhat about symbols. Symbols turn into alphabets, so it's not a coincidence how the L gets shaped that way. The L starts off as a symbol that gets adopted as a hieroglyph by the Egyptians. And then later on, other people in the area turn certain hieroglyphs into letters. And then over time, they evolve and shift slowly, and they turn into what we use today. So it's good to know symbols, but that's sort of an advanced one. Most people aren't that geeky. There's another one here called Writing Systems. And I know Mike has probably 5 books like this.
Writing Systems. This also looks like a relative, like a language book, almost like a...
It's talking about the writing systems of how languages work. So it talks essentially about the structure of how writing systems are made. where do they come from, the different kinds of writing systems there are out there.
So like the system by which the language functions. Yeah, this is kind of
the most interesting one I know of is the Mayan. And there's a great documentary, I believe, on Amazon Prime. I believe it's on Amazon Prime or maybe Netflix. And essentially the idea of it is...
The documentary you're saying?
Yeah, it's a great documentary if you want to learn about the Mayan system, which is the most complex alphabet I've ever seen. And so start there and make it simpler. And there's another one which I did not bring up with me. It's called the Language Construction Kit. I will actually put a link to that in the show notes, and I apologize for not having it with me. I believe it's down on my other desk. But essentially, it was written by a linguist who likes to write fantasy languages. So he sort of came up with a system of what to think about.
Tolkien?
No. This is
You're describing Tolkien, though.
Yes. But he's not the last linguist who likes fantasy languages. But it's a systematic way to go about building fantasy languages, mainly Western style.
It's not the guy who's behind the language creation in Game of Thrones, is it? Because they created languages for the television shows. I don't know if they did for the books, but the languages in the show are full-blown languages.
No, I know that. And there are lots of full-blown languages at this point, like Badrakim is a full-blown language. Mm-hmm. Probably a very poor one because I made it and I'm not a linguist, but it's the best I could do.
Fair enough. Did you start with Mayan and then make it simpler?
I started with German. German seemed very good. You pronounce every letter in the way you see it.
Makes sense to me. It seems to me that there's just way too many letters. Like German words, they like a lot of letters,
And I wanted that feel for the culture. I actually wanted the long words.
I actually watched a real funny video the other day where they took, and this is more regional. It'll make more sense to New Englanders. Where they took a bunch of people who, I think maybe one of the people in the video had either lived in or was from Massachusetts. But all they did was take a bunch of different people who were relatively not from Massachusetts or weren't familiar with it. And they gave them town names. And they said, pronounce this town name.
Leominster?
Yeah. Worcester. How is Worcester spelled? Worcester. There's so many town names that they pulled that there's literally 4 to 6 letters in the middle of the word that are not pronounced at all. They're totally not there.
Well, walk around Leominster and ask for people where the town hall Leominster is, and I bet you they look at you like you're an idiot.
How is it pronounced?
Leominster? I have no idea.
Leominster. Well, it's like it's spelled Haver Hill. That is exactly how it's spelled. Haver.
And these mean a lot easier if you're from Eastern Mass.
Right. So Haver Hill. How do they say it? Haverhill.
Believable. Yep.
Yep.
That's kind of and we moved out here from Indiana too, so it's the exact same thing. Worcester is the prime example because where it's located, you will probably pass through or near Worcester, and people will talk about Worcester, and you're like, "Where is Worcester, Mass?" They're like, "Right there."
Yeah, that's it. It's right there. See all the signs? I see Worcester.
Do they make some kind of sauce here?
Yeah. Next book.
Okay. Next couple I want to talk about are religious books. The Bible might be one. A lot of stuff in there. People read it. Actually, I have a very old one over there. My grandmother's Bible.
Yeah, I see it there.
Yep. And
I have my father's old Bible.
But many people, especially in the Western world, are kind of familiar with Christianity, even if you're not a Christian. Reading about early Christian sects is probably more important. Like I have a book over there on the Gnostics.
Let me enunciate that for a second.
Sexes?
Are you saying SECTS, sects?
Sects, yeah.
Okay. It sounded like you said reading about early Christian sects.
I only do that on internet, things you can't find in my history.
Okay. I just want to be clear for the listener what you're referring to. Sects.
But there are a couple good ones, and one I actually got in a college class years ago, and it's written from an Indian medicine man. It's called The Red Man's Religion. And essentially it's explaining, I believe it was the Lakota view of the world. And it's very interesting to read. And if you want ideas on and inspirations for sort of shamanistic and animalism sort of religions, it's a great book to read. And it's actually from someone who knew what he was talking about. Okay. Here's one that you may or may not have heard of, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You can get,
the Necronomicon.
No,
No,
Egyptian
that's not.
Book of
The
Dead.
Egyptian Book of the Dead. I see.
The Necronomicon, I wasn't going to bring up, but it's a good one if you can get a hold of.
I have a copy of it.
Every time we start, it's like
I know.
both of us.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
So you don't want to talk about the Necronomicon at all?
No, because that starts bad, but great movies.
I gotta tell you, I tried reading it, and I didn't find it very interesting. Like, I found it difficult to read.
Mm-hmm.
I found it not very engaging. So
I caused an army of undead to rise up because of it. There was a movie about it some time ago.
there's a TV show coming.
From Army of Darkness, or
Ash versus the Army of Darkness, and Bruce Campbell is in it. It looks amazing.
okay. For all of the listeners out there, if you want to make a room happy, if you ever come into our studio and tell us about a Bruce Campbell production, I think this room would be very happy. I love Bruce. I love Bruce.
My name is Bruce. Bubba Hotep. If Chins Could Kill. Army of Darkness. Evil Dead. Spider-Man. What are the other big... Well, Burn Notice, but I didn't watch Burn Notice. But I heard he was awesome in that.
Burn Notice is a very educational TV show.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh. I thought it was kind of salacious. But
it is. It's both.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I think I've only seen one episode of it ever, and I remembered liking it.
Yes.
But I never got into it. And I think it was on Netflix for a while. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore.
That's a shame, because it is a wonderful show. And you would like it because it's educational and salacious. It's wonderful.
That's my favorite kind of fiction.
And a lot of mojitos.
I love mojitos.
So do I. I never even tried one before the show, but
seriously?
I was on a cruise ship and I'm like, I'll have a mojito.
Yeah, mojitos are great. Especially if you can get like a berry mojito, like a blackberry mojito or blueberry mojito.
I just said normal mojitos, which are just delicious.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Turn this a little. I want to be able to read these titles. What have you got there?
Okay, I will show it up here. This is one you've probably not heard of because you're a simpleton.
I am a simpleton.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
No one's heard of that.
Yeah, okay.
But essentially, and there's several here, and there's probably no reason to say them all, books on mythology, and actual mythology like Gilgamesh.
Jeff's got a mythology book sitting in front of him that I'm not exaggerating is easily 2 inches thick. It's huge. It's a book. I said a mythology book.
I know. I didn't respond.
Yes, but I see you ready to bust a gut laughing over there.
Okay, yes. Definitely. It's a 2-inch thick book. Just to enunciate that. Let's see. I have a book here, Marcus Aurelius. Read biographies of famous people. You will come up with stuff that is so crazy.
Also, the Kim Kardashian story.
Historical people.
There you go. It's a big distinction there. Famous people,
distinction.
Famous historical people.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't be reading, the Kanye biopic.
And never read a biography written when the person's alive.
Yeah. You want it when they're dead and preferably unauthorized.
Yes. Well, or it's so much after their death, there's no one left to authorize it.
Yeah. There you go.
Because the problem is, especially, it's like if you were to read a biography of, let's say, George H. Bush. I'm not going to go to W, which would offend people just by saying his full name. But at this point, there's just too many people alive who are affected both ways. And there's just not clear thinking. So you really need them to be dead. Everyone who is alive that could possibly be affected by them should be dead before a good biography can truly be written.
Okay.
I have another book here, which I'm sure Mike has. He has one 10 times the size of this.
Fiefs and Vassals.
Fiefs and vassals.
Fiefs. Oh, so it's not. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. And essentially, it is all about the
caste system?
Yes. Well, caste, not technically a class system, but about the medieval structure of society.
Mm-hmm.
Books, and it could be about the caste system in India. Anything about the way classes interacted in different types of societies are wonderful books. My favorite book to start off with.
Start what off with?
Before you start world building.
This is the book.
This is the book right here. It is called Patterns in Prehistory. And who doesn't want to own college textbook called Patterns in Prehistory.
May I see that?
Yes.
Patterns in Prehistory.
And essentially, it's very much about how things start coming together from the time of crazy hunter-gatherer tribes into very, very early settlements.
And how can you go wrong with the very first quote on the back of the book? Solid, well-written, up-to-date, authoritative. It will continue to set a standard matched by few of its rivals.
Yes. And it's a great book. Now, some of these books you might not read word for word. This will be one of them that you'll probably read 10 times. No, not really.
Well, you probably have.
You'll go through it 10 times. You won't read it word for word 10 times.
You'll reference things.
Now, this one, I randomly picked one of her books, Carol Rose. She has some great books about different creatures in society.
Creatures? How do you mean?
Like from mythology.
Oh, literally like mythological creatures.
The one I grabbed I randomly grabbed this and Mike would love it. It's called Giants, Monsters, and Dragons.
Big fan.
The Encyclopedia of Folklore, Legend, and Myth. And this book is chock full of monster...
Chock full is the word you're shooting for.
What did I say, chalked?
You said chuck full.
It's shuffled full.
It's shuffled full. There was full of shuffling.
Of monsters from all types of cultures, all types of... Everywhere in the world, if she can find a monster, she has, I believe, I have a couple books from her, but she has several books like this. And it's like it says, it's an encyclopedia of monsters. And if you're a world builder and you're looking for something fresh that you haven't heard of before,
it's probably in that book.
It's a great resource because you can flip through here and go, this sounds awesome. This will do what I need it to. And then you can modify it to work in your work.
The funny thing is that one of the books that I wanted to talk about, and we don't even really need to have a full-blown discussion about it, but just a reference was I was going to talk about the D&D Monsters Manual. And that's basically a real-world equivalent of that.
I know GURPS has like the Beastery. That one definitely has some stuff in it, but I like this one because she goes back to the source books. When you get into typically role-playing games, they've modified them to fit into their system. And so sometimes they've either lost stuff or they gained stuff. So she's kind of referencing it as close as we know to ancient days of yore when they were developed. So what
do you mean they were real in days of yore? I mean, that's a history book. She's cataloging.
Well, you're probably right because it does say it's an encyclopedia, which that's like saying it's on the internet.
Well, everything on the internet's true, so.
Yeah, and if you don't leave me up...
Unless it's about me, in which case you really have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yes, like the internet history of his I posted 10 minutes ago.
What?
Now, my favorite types of books. There are two types of books that are my favorite. They are not for reading. They are for flipping through and enjoying.
Okay.
They are art books and architecture books. And when I say architecture, I mean pictures of buildings, new and old.
I would not have pegged you for an art buff.
I'm not.
An architecture book, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But
Did you know the Mysteritas? Do you remember them? Elven Race in My World?
I was going to say, sounds super familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. They're based on a mask from a book.
Is it that book?
No, it's actually on the cover of one of my books over there, but it's based on a green death mask, a green Aztec death mask.
Okay.
That and the Mayan calendar and the Aztec calendar, those style of calendars, that inspired that race and how the culture of that elven race was based on two things, a mask and a calendar. And then on top of that too, I do like role-playing games for inspiration purposes, looking at system stuff, because it makes you think of sword fighting and a system like GURPS is really good because you just go through the skill list and go, I didn't even realize that was a skill, and that, I don't know, itself, like, let me look into what this astronomy and see what could possibly be there.
The role-playing one that I actually wrote down on my list that I think is a great system to go through. I like the mythology. I like that it really pushes you to start thinking in their world is almost any of the White Wolf books.
White Wolf is good for that, but for a world builder, you don't want to think in someone else's world.
Well, my thought is not necessarily thinking in their world, but so much exposure to another person's world, like getting the detail and understanding the devil's in the details.
I actually like looking at people's stuff.
So one of the other books that I wanted to mention was the Harry Potter series, because it's so engrossing. Like she's got, like if you were to ask her anything about her world, she'd have an answer. Her world is so fleshed out. And I think that's a mark of a good world builder.
And I think part of her advantage is her world is a world within the world. So, it is a pocket in Earth possibly, but it's like you access it through Earth. And so the wonderful advantage she has over a lot of world builders is descriptions. She can explain Quidditch through the auspice of sports that exist in the world now. And it makes a lot of sense. It'd be much harder to explain Quidditch if you were on a world where you don't have.
Does she ever explain it in the auspice of real world sports?
Yes, she does.
She does? Okay.
The first time they do it was that in book 1, I think. And but it was more like to give you kind of a basic idea. It's like this plus this together.
It's like soccer plus lacrosse plus hockey and
dragons.
Dragons. There's dragons. not in Quidditch.
I know. I just threw that in there because I like saying the word dragons. Okay. And now one other.
You actually added a couple of books to the pile there. You were trying to be sneaky, but I saw you do it.
Yes.
So what did you add? You didn't get to the last book in that pile. Do you want to cover that? Or
actually both? Actually, that might be the mask I was talking about. Oh, yes.
That's it? Is that what they're supposed to look like?
No, but they actually use ceremonial masks like this. Except I like green jade better.
Fair enough.
But and just since you can't see, it's called Aztec Art by Esther Paz Torre. It's Pazz Torre. Don't get that one. But and there's just this great mask. But that my creative juices went thump.
Yep.
And with the word Aztec above it, I'm like,
yeah, gravitating towards that. Of course.
Mesoamerican influence here. Go. And that's really what I like art for, is it's the inspiration, and it doesn't even have to be relevant to what I'm trying to build. It doesn't have to be relevant to what I'm trying to build. It has to be inspirational. And that's what art does really quickly. You just flip through, look at pictures. You see two people looking at each other in a certain way. That might inspire you to go a certain way. And it might not be even for a relationship between people. It might be, I want a culture where people act like that. And then your brain has to fill in everything to get to that point in time.
That idea actually reminds me of something you earlier were talking about, just literature, just reading good books. And one of my favorite authors is John Irving. And most of his stuff, it's all modern. Not to say like 2015. He's got a lot of stuff that is more like 70s, 80s, and what have you.
He's been around forever.
And I don't know a ton about him. I know a little bit about him as a person, but because of multiple books that he has written that I have read, I would love to see Vienna. I've never had a desire to go to Vienna. Like if you said you can get one or two good big vacations, where are you going? I would say Ireland. I'd say Germany. I've got family in both these places, but I wouldn't think of Vienna because of the way he writes about it in his books. And not just one, like 2 or 3 of his books, he talks very lovingly about Vienna. It makes me
supposed to be gorgeous too.
It makes me want to see that city. It makes me want to experience it.
You figure that's like Mozart, Beethoven.
Yep.
A wonderful city. And I'm like you too. It's like, for me, I think Italy, somewhere in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, Rome, Cyprus,
Ireland,
Greece.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, most definitely. But Vienna is one of those. I've never been there. Even when I was stationed in Germany, I just never went to Vienna. Okay. There's one other section of books I want to talk about. And in all of these areas, there are tons of books besides the ones I'm talking about. And actually, I have more books than these on my shelves. But they're just different areas I refer back to a lot. And the last one is economy. And you don't need a perfect working economy in your world. But to keep it realistic, you need to understand how exchanges work.
Okay, I was about to say they should know how their economy works.
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to
It doesn't have to be 100% fleshed out.
Yeah.
Fleshed out, rather.
But, it's like, how do they exchange? If they're very simple, culture, they're probably going to be bartering. Maybe it's at a transition between barter and money where money starts coming about. Or maybe there's something post-money you get to. But reading economists from both the left and the right, and I say that from an economic standpoint because you're going to be shocked when you read economists. You always hear about those huge disparities between the economics of the left and the right. And you do when politicians talk, but when economists talk, there's not a whole heck of a lot of difference. A lot of it's just about the controls and that part of it, but less of it's about the importance of things within the economy. One of my favorites and a great book to read is F.A. Hayek's The Fatal Conceit. The reason this book is good, if you like socialism, don't read it because it will make you mad.
If you like socialism,
don't read it because one of his big things he was trying to stop was the growth of socialism. And this is back in the 30s.
See, I like the idea of on paper, socialism works great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Problem with socialism is not socialism, it's people.
Yes. And that's one of the things he actually talked about. That's what the fatal conceit is, people. Yeah. People thinking that we can learn how to control something completely from a few years in college. And something as complex as the economy, where there's no one in the world who knows how to make a pencil. And when I say that, I mean, take the wood, create the graphite on the inside, cover it in paint, make the paint to cover it, make the eraser, make the metal band. There's probably no one in the world with a skill set to put together a pencil you would pay for. And if they did, they would have to charge you $500 or $1,000 for a pencil. But because of economies and how they work, you can go to the store, buy a box of them for a couple bucks. But The Fatal Conceit's a good book for the idea of the arrogance of leaders. And this is of all types of leaders from every type of government that's ever been around. Their arrogance thinking about how they can control societies and economies. And he has a lot of other great books too, especially if you're a libertarian maybe. And another book, if you don't know buckus about an economy and you don't like books with words written by economists because you will find them boring. There's a simple book, and there's an older book from Irwin Schiff, which is half of the book I'm going to tell you is How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. And this was a book written by Peter and Andrew Schiff. It was their old book that their dad had written years ago in the 60s or 70s, and they updated it after 2008 in the market crash. And so the first half of the book is essentially getting to where we were in 2008. And then they added in at the end about their belief of what was causing the problems after 2008. So if you like Democrats or Republicans, you'll be offended by it equally, which is the nice thing about the book. But it makes it very simplistic and more simplistic than it really is. But it gives you the basic framework and structure of how an economy works and why it works. And
so a good education.
It's a good, cheap education that a fourth grader could read easily.
Really?
Yeah. And there's pictures.
How an economy works.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. May I see it?
Yeah. You can borrow it if you want to.
I just might. Well, yeah, and actually, this looks like a fourth grader's book.
It is made for a fourth grader.
Oh, is it really? It's like it made for kids, kids can understand economy? Yeah, what you have here is a lot of the text is quite large, honestly. Somebody with bad vision could read this.
You can read that in a couple hours, I think.
All right. Yeah, I'd be happy to borrow this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I read it at fourth grade level.
Ish.
On a good day.
Me too. Ish. Okay. But once again, though, there are tons of other books that are useful. The thing is, as a world builder, you have to be guided by your interest because your world's going to reflect your interest. Especially like if you want to involve space in it, you're going to do a lot more reading about astronomy, and you're going to do a lot more reading about astrology because that's the science of how space works is called astrology.
I think astronomy is the one you're shooting for.
Yeah, that's the modern version. Yes.
Jeff is air quoting the modern version. Yes, I realize you are, but they can't see you doing it. I'm getting the visual cues; they aren't.
Yeah. But for me, my favorite things are culture and religion. I will ravenously devour that content.
I want that in a soundbite so I can just play it for you sometimes. My favorite things are culture and religion.
And this will, and Michael knows this. I caught myself there.
You did.
That I'm the most cultured person around. By the way I define it. Now.
How can I confirm that you're the most cultured person by your definition?
How could I not be?
I suppose I can. That's true.
My definition is I've probably created more cultures than anyone else.
That's probably also not true.
Who's created more cultures than I have?
Tolkien?
No, than you know.
What do you mean? That
you've personally met.
That I've personally met?
And I've actually created more cultures than Tolkien.
Yeah?
His are more complete than mine are, but I have more.
Okay, fair enough. I'm trying to think of who in our friend circle is a big world builder.
And I really don't know Dawn, maybe.
Dawn was my first guess.
Dawn was my thought. Anyone else who's
but I don't know that Dawn's created as many as you, but I think, again, hers are flushed out because she's got multiple novels.
She does Earth-based stuff, though. So, I mean...
Yeah.
And you do, if you're creating an Earth-based fantasy, you're creating your own cultures in there, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like the sub-vibe culture, like... The world of Buffy's friends, that's their own culture in the scope of the world. So there really is some of that in there. So it's harder to measure, I think, than to mine where, well, I haven't listed it before.
This is a good moment we can mention some of Dawn's books as reading material on a book recommended episode. I highly recommend her first book, which is called Luminous. And so Dawn Metcalf, Luminous.
Yes, I think Luminous would be correct.
Well, the thing that bugs me is, like, I don't know how to say this without throwing her.
I don't think we should say this.
Well, yes. Well, she because it was a book deal, she didn't choose the title.
Yes. And
the title, if you ask me, is not appropriate. And it like the original title was going to be Skin and Bones, and that would have been appropriate. That's appropriate. Great book. Great world. Like she's got a whole sideways world that exists in a parallel within our own. It's really an engaging book. I like it a lot.
A lovingly twisted woman.
Yeah. Like that book, and I think I mentioned this on the show in a prior episode, has one of, if not my favorite villains in any fictional universe. Like one of the best villains I've ever read.
I like best about Dawn. You meet her and you would never know.
No.
If you get to know her, you
well, yes, but like she very, some people are just like, oh, hi, how you doing? Mm-hmm. Dawn is very smiley and friendly and welcoming and, a warm person. And then you read her horrible, dangerous, scary, terrifying imagination. Like her second set of books, like the third book in that trilogy has just dropped, actually. The Twixt series.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember all the titles.
The problem is they're all very similar.
Yeah. Indelible, Invisible. What they're referring to is inks. Like one of the characters his name is Ink. Insidious. That's why I didn't remember it, because it doesn't reference ink like Indelible and Invisible does. But same thing with in regards to how her first novel is, it's a parallel world that exists within our own. It's a different world. They are not related. The first book and the first book she released and her trilogy that has just been completed, they're not related. They're completely different universes, which is what I really like.
Yes.
But yeah, great reads. I can't recommend them highly enough.
Especially if you have teenage girls interested in or teenagers in general.
Well, I was about to say, see, that's unfair, because if you look at the cover of Luminous, it looks like a girly book.
It's not really a girly book, but it's
not a girly book. Like
it's technically teen romance. And ask Harlequin Teen.
I wouldn't call it teen romance. I would call it,
just because you enjoyed it.
I would call
which means more people can.
I would call it young adult fantasy. There is a romance within the book, but I don't think that's the mainstay of the book. And also, name a young adult book that doesn't have a romance subplot, because I think it's a subplot. I don't think it's the main plot.
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit is a young adult. Today's young adults. I realized it was meant for fifth graders in the 60s. the fifth graders in the 60s knew Algebra 2.
But fifth grader books are middle school. It's a different genre than young adult.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying now we probably consider it high school. I didn't know even in some colleges. But
what? The Hobbit or Dawn's books?
The Hobbit is
The Hobbit.
considered is read in college classes sometimes now, which is sad.
But for what reason?
For literature reasons. It's an important book.
I agree.
Yeah. So
why are you like shrugging that one though? Like why is that a problem for you?
Because it shows how poor our reading skills are.
Yeah, I agree.
From fifth grade to now, sometimes in college people
yes.
are being
yes.
And as long as they're introduced to it, because actually Ari Salvador said the thing that inspired him to get into fantasy and role playing, because he's a little bit older than I am, and he was a great guy. He actually came down for everyone had VIP tickets. There was free food.
So Jeff went to an event where he got to meet
R.A. Salvador.
R.A. Salvador. So that's what he's referring. That's what he's referring to.
Mm-hmm. And the writer of 40 plus novels, 17 bestsellers, and he sat down at every table. And at first I was kind of annoyed because he was sitting there talking to a couple people. Then he's like, "Hold on, I have to." And then he goes and sits down. I'm like, "Oh, he's eating. I'll leave him alone." And every once in a while I look around and I didn't see him standing around for people to go up to. And I'm going, well, that sucks. But at least, I got to hear him talk a little bit. And then he sat down at my table because he was actually going to every table and sitting down so you could have an intimate conversation with everyone there.
Wow.
A great down-to-earth guy. And I learned Drist was not intended to be a main character. It was an afterthought.
It's funny how that happens.
And it was literally over the phone with his person getting ready to go sell it to the sales team at TSR. And she's pressing him because the character needs a sidekick. And
Drist was a sidekick.
It thought up over the phone before she ran into a meeting.
Wow.
And which is now like definitely in D&D, one of the largest fantasy characters. And I would arguably, he's had over 30 books written about him now.
Well, that's I think it's funny because in Dawn's book, the main character, of course, is, the avatar through which you follow the story. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's the villain. The villain is and there's a lot of good characters in that book. There's five or six characters in that book that really jump off the page for me. But the villain is the one that I just love.
Does not shock me.
He's
great. I remember when you came to me and you were like, I just read Silence of the Lambs, and I can really identify with this Hannibal guy. He just seems like a real
reasonable.
Yeah.
It's he comes from a place that I understand,
Yes, Michael. We're going to end the show right now.
You hungry? I am. So what other big books would you say, just maybe some obvious ones that people might not think are so obvious? What are maybe some fictional books that inspired you?
Any later Twain.
Mark Twain.
Yes. I think his last book, the unfinished one, The Mysterious Note, I think. Camelot, King Arthur, or Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I believe is the first fantasy book ever. I mean, if you think about it, it was a time travel book, I mean, and the movie was goofy, and take it for what it is, but still, that's sort of the beginning of the genre of actual fantasy, as in other world altered reality stuff and time travel. And I'm not a big fan of older stuff like Faulkner. Ugh.
Some of that older stuff, like the classics, I have a ton of classic books on my bookshelf. Mm-hmm. That stuff that was required reading in high school that maybe I just never got around to, like The Sound and the Fury, or was it The Lord of the Flies, Catcher in the Rye? Exactly. I have all those books, and many more that titles of which I'm forgetting right this moment. But I've tried to sit down and read some of them, and they're not engaging. They're tough.
No,
not tough in a way that it's difficult to read it. Tough in a way that it's difficult to be entertained by it or be drawn into it.
Catch in the Rye, I could not stand.
I mean, again, like I know I always fall back on movies, but you take a look at old filmmaking. Like I love old movies. I'll watch old movies, but it's because I get it. I have such a strong base of knowledge and understanding and studied history in film that I don't mind sitting down and watching a movie that is painfully slow because I understand how the method with which they are giving you the story. My wife can't do it. Like she has a hard time watching something that's older than anything that's older than like 2000. I can't get her interested in it. And I find books for me are that way. Like if I'm reading an older book where it is a really slow delivery, unless it's something like, like I love like A Tale of Two Cities is great. That pulls you in. Old, Dickens and Twain, sure. But some of that other stuff, it's like, it feels arduous. It feels like it's dragging you through the story. And it's like, I don't want to be on this ride.
You know what else I like to do though, too? I'm a big fan of just reading other genre, horror.
You read horror?
Occasionally. I mean, Stephen King, everyone, I think.
I was just about to say, you know what? I don't think I read any horror. And then it's King.
Yeah.
I don't even think of him as horror. I think of him as drama.
One book, I can't specifically remember. It was kind of loosely based off of Jack the Ripper. I believe it was called The Ghoul. And I read.
This is a King book?
No. This was I don't even.
Kunst?
I don't know. No. I don't even know the author. I read it when I was in the service because someone had the book. And when you're in the service, you're like, that has words, give it to me. That has pictures, give it to me. That has sound, give whatever.
Yeah, right. You don't have access to a whole lot of media.
Yeah, I'll take whatever I can get.
Or rather, let's be very specific. You didn't have access to a whole lot of media. I imagine nowadays the men in the military can get anything they want.
But I remember liking the book, and I don't remember much about it except it was trying to play off this Jack the Ripper kind of vibe, but it was more horrorish and ghoul and like
fantasy or supernatural
kind of book, and I enjoyed it, and I actually ended up getting like a dagger from the book painted on my CVC helmet, and then it was funny too because my track was also named after a Glenn Danzig song called "The Devil's Plaything," and that was the name of my track.
Your half track?
Not a half track. It was a Bradley, an M3A2 Bradley fighting vehicle. It's called an armored track.
Called a track. Okay.
But in the service, you just call it your track.
Gotcha.
And and I just remember this major walking up he's like looking at.
For those of you unfamiliar, major's a pretty high rank.
Well, much higher than I was.
Yeah. What were you, corporal?
No, actually, I refused to go into leadership school because it was offered to me, but I said no because there's someone else in my platoon who could. So I said no. They threatened to Article 15 me, which in layman's terms it means to punish me without using due process because I refused to go to the school. But someone else wanted to stay in the service for life. I was planning to get out at that point. So I didn't do it. But this major saw our track name and he was like, does someone think this is appropriate? And then like he turns around and he sees like me in my helmet and
a big dagger on your helmet.
Dagger that looked kind of like an upside down cross on my helmet the way it was, and would just turn around and walked away. And and luckily I was very good at shooting, as the wall in my dining room attest, because he had it out for us, and then he was forced to walk away because that was the same gunnery where the range went down when I was out there and I was getting bored. And you hot mic yourself. So you cross the wires of your microphone as they plug in to the intercom, which allows people in the gunnery scoring room to listen to people talk in the vehicle. And you're required to do this because they want to make sure the proper communication is happening on top of being able to hit targets. And it roughly goes, the Bradley commander goes, gunner, Sabo, 2 PCs. And then I would identify, and then, he would say left PC. Then I would say identified.
So as you're explaining this, I want you to
explain it.
Explain what that means, because all you're using is jargon, which I'm not familiar with.
Okay. So gunner would be me.
Yeah.
Sabo is the kind of round. It's armor piercing round.
Okay.
2 PCs or 2 personnel carriers.
Okay.
So there's 2 like similar vehicles to what I'm in.
This is an enemy thing you're pointing at, though.
Yes.
Okay. And is this a drill or is this real? This is
You're
hot.
supposed to use this whenever you're firing a weapon, but this is a live fire exercise. It's a gunnery exercise.
So it's an exercise, but you are using live ammunition.
Oh yes.
Okay.
And then he'd say left PC because in his estimation, that's the closer or the more dangerous vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say identified, which just means I'm now.
I recognize.
I'm on the target. Then I'll say fire, and I'll say on the way, and then I'll fire out. What is it? 5, 3, 1 round or something like that. It'd be like boom, 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 and you had to get a certain number of 25 millimeter rounds into the target. It would fall down, and then you'd switch targets, engage that target.
Mm-hmm.
You kill both targets, 100 points. And then you'd have 10 engagements. Some would be infantry. Most would be vehicles that you could shoot with 25. They don't let you shoot tow missiles, which is sad because those are fun to shoot. But those are a lot more expensive.
Right.
But we were going through this exchange, but the gunnery range went down because of a range fire. I don't remember why. And so I'm sitting there, and my driver, this guy, Nick, me and him were both crazy metalheads. And our Bradley commander was pretty hip too. I mean, he let us put a Glenn Danzig on the side of the vehicle, and so I start seeing Running Free from Iron Maiden, and because I'm trying to
you're singing this.
I'm singing this
over
out
a hot mic,
but I'm trying to keep my adrenaline pumped, and I'm feeling it fall away, and you need the adrenaline to help quickly move to targets, and so. And I'm seeing it very poorly, I'm sure, too, because it's not a skill that the audience here wants to know.
No.
And so we're doing, and then finally, by the time I'm done, everyone on a hot mic is doing this.
Singing this
sort of in unison together.
Gotcha.
And because we all like the song.
Right.
And I think they realized what was going on. And so we ended up to go back for scoring after our engagement was done. And he was pointing out, he's like, those guys are very unprofessional. You know, as we're going in, you know, to be graded, I scored 1,000 points, which is perfect. And we're coming back out, and he's like, "What did they score to the grader?" He's like, 1,000 points, sir. And he's like,
"It's nothing." Yeah,
and he walks away.
He's angry that he couldn't really fault you for it
because he had 1,000 points in gunnery. That's like doing your boss a super favor because you know it's like in corporate worlds how if you hit profit, like goals that you get bonuses.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a captain and you want to look good, the better your people shoot, the better you look.
Yeah.
And people shooting perfect really makes you look good. So
because it's easy to make a small mistake and get just shy perfect.
If the dialogue back and forth was off, if I forgot to say fire before I fired, if I forgot to say identified, you lose points. So, you have to one hit every target and kill it. And do the proper exchange of dialogue. And obviously the driver has to also work correctly because if he's moving too quickly, you lose the platform for your gun. Yep. But you're moving in a lot of the engagements. So it's a team effort. So
what's our time at? What are we at?
Well, we are at time for the world building topic of the day.
The topic is books that we're recommending. I think you mean the world building task of the day.
What am I saying?
Do you know what the task is?
I have no idea what I'm saying. How could I know a task? But yes, actually, the task for today is to read Gilgamesh, or try to. It might not work for you. It's tough to read because it definitely was not written for English. And
it's a short book.
It's a short book, but it is an old epic. And it's good to think about your people if they're very old in the literature they will deliver, not in the literature you would deliver for them. And it's just a way to think about cultures. And since I'm a very cultured guy, as I proved perfectly earlier.
Time and time again.
It's the suit I'm wearing gives it away. You just can't see that.
Jeff's not wearing a suit.
I'll take off my polo and then you'll see my Flash t-shirt.
Not a suit. Oh, I see. You mean superhero suit.
Yes.
Where is my superhero suit? Jeff is, in fact, wearing a triumphant Flash T-shirt underneath of his polo shirt, which is pretty cool.
And so, which was my T-shirt for the day at work. So I always feel like I'm getting away with something.
Even this is under your shirt.
That's right. And it kind of goes.
Yeah, it does. It almost matches with the same color.
Almost like I have style.
Oh, you have a style.
Probably the way my wife would put it if she was feeling nice.
When she's not dressing you.
Which is most of the time because I'm usually gone when she wakes up. So,
what about a real world task for the day? Do we have a real world task?
Absolutely not.
No? Do you want me to try to make one up on the fly?
Make one up on the fly.
All right. Real world task for the day.
Plan ahead.
Well, plan ahead is a great one because what I was going to say is like we're coming towards the tail end of summer now. We're going to be gearing up towards fall. So any one of the last minute summer things, what my wife and I actually went to, if I could segue tangent briefly, ESPN. I live in the hometown where ESPN is, their headquarters. And they have their company picnic every year at a local.
Is that heaven?
Is that heaven?
Actually, I know where it is, and I know that's not heaven, but okay.
So they have their company-wide picnic at a local amusement park. And the cool thing is they...
Is that Lake Compounds?
Lake Compounds, yes. So they buy the park for that day. So nobody is – everyone that's there is there for ESPN. Well, my wife subcontracts for ESPN. She's not an ESPN employee. She's not an ESPN employee, and subsequently she is not entitled to go to that picnic. But because she knows so many people always put us on the guest list, and we're allowed to go. So we've gone for the last 4 years in a row. This year we went, and I had to be up early the next day. Normally we go we get there at like 10 in the morning. We stay all the way to like 9 o'clock at night. Free food, free booze, access to the whole park. You don't spend $1 and you have access to everything.
That's the best picnic ever.
It is great. And there's also like free gifts, like they give you a water bottle, t-shirt, hat, and all that jazz. So, and this year we're walking into the park, and there's always a music set up right at the beginning. And there's this guy walking next to me. He has a full Ewok t-shirt on. And I get into a brief conversation with him about that. I was like, you realize they were supposed to be Wookiees. Like, if you look at the word Ewok, it's Wook-E, switch it, Ewok. Mm-hmm. Like, Lucas meant for the Ewoks to be Wookiees, but budget restrictions forbade them from having enough suits, like Chewbacca's suit, to have a planet full of Wookiees. So they said to cut them in half, we'll get these cheap little fuzzy suits and we'll fill them with little people, and they'll be Ewoks, and that's what they did.
We'll rehire all the old Jawas.
Exactly, yeah. You were double tipping. So that's what, and I'm just BSing with him about it and whatever. And as we're walking closer, I start to hear the music that's playing on the sound system at the front door, and it's the Cantina music. Now, I'm just thinking somebody is just playing the music.
I get it now.
And I'm walking up and I'm like, that's the Cantina music. That's the music playing in the Cantina in the first Star Wars. And I'm not putting two and two together. And as we get to the front gate, because it's a long pathway, there was a big sign. It's all Star Wars themed this year. So
because they're owned by ABC.
It's owned by Disney, who owns Star Wars. So it was all Star Wars themed. So I got like, a Yoda water bottle, a Star Wars t-shirt, a Jedi hat, and all this great
one ever.
But that was my half of it. The half that I'm actually trying to get to is that because I had to work the next day, I wanted to leave at like 4 p.m. And by that time, we still hadn't gotten into the water park, and I didn't want to. And it was really hot that day. Like, I wanted to, but I knew if we went, it was going to eat up another 2-3 hours of our day. And I wanted to go home. I wanted to rest, and I had things to get ready for the next day. So we didn't go. So my world builder task for the day and for the end of the summer is I want to take my wife to a water park before the season is totally done. So I recommend, if you haven't covered your one of your summer outings, get them in now, because you're not going to have much more time to do it. And
as a side tip added on to that, I would go ahead and Google Farmers Almanac's predictions for this winter, especially if you live up in the Northeast.
Scary.
Anywhere from Delaware up, it's really, really scary.
Yeah, it's going to be bad this year.
So it looks like it's going to be bad again.
What's also scary is just how accurate the Farmer's Almanac is year after year. You can pretty much trust what is in that book every year.
They won't tell you when the storms are coming, but if they say it's going to be above average snow, it's above average snow.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because you watch the local news or even the national news and they're all trying to guess what time the storms are coming in and they look foolish. Yep. The Farmer's Almanac that says this is what's going to look like.
This is what's going to be. And they write the book like a year ahead of time. And they're like, yeah, we know what it's going to be like. Oh my gosh, did we just figure out that the Almanac is written by the Illuminati? Jeff, did we just figure that out? I mean, that's ludicrous. Who believes in the Illuminati? I mean, I don't.
It's Michael again. I don't either.
I got to go home and delete my internet history.
Wow. Okay. Now,
tease for next week's episode.
Yes, that would be a good one to have ready.
Pause it.
I'm ready. Oh, you already have
Pause it for a second.
Okay.
No. Oh, you have one?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say let's brainstorm for a minute because I feel jealous that I haven't come up with one yet.
I think you're going to like this one.
I'm sure I will.
And
you're going to keep all this in?
Not all of this in, but probably quite a bit of it, because some of this is actually interesting. Only the words I say.
I'm going to cut you out entirely. You know that the show only has me on it, right? It's a very one-sided conversation.
I would sound so awesomely insane. I'm not sure if there would be a difference.
We should do that like one episode. Like make it a point to not laugh while the other person's talking, and just make it a point that like you're silent when I'm speaking and I'm silent when you're speaking. I have to interrupt you or I'll never get a word in. So that's why I do it. But if we were to do that for one episode, just kind of like give each other like visual cues to like, okay, I'm going to shut up now. Now you talk. And then just cut it and release it as 2 separate episodes. So to understand it, you'd have to listen to both.
If you're more popular, you could do the same thing and be like, and for the rest of the episode for 1995.
Or maybe we do release it in one episode, but the first half is just you and the second half is just me. And you got to figure out what's going on.
With this one, audience.
I wouldn't want to edit it.
Secret societies.
That's a good one.
Talking about the Illuminati, I look over there, I see secret societies on a book on my shelf. Because it's not Mike's house, so it's not his bookshelf.
Of course. So, like, we could talk about ninjas. Who doesn't want to talk about ninjas? The Illuminati, vampires,
everything. But that's the great thing is it's like what are actual secret societies, and then
the Illuminati, ninjas, cool vampires,
monkeys.
Now, monkeys are just real animals. They're not secret. Everyone knows that monkeys are really. Yeah.
I need the audience to hit me up on Twitter and let me know if they've ever heard of monkeys before. I think that's pretty.
When Sarah and I first got Zoe, who is our second cat, who we've only had like a year or two now, about a year now, and we took her to the vet. I think for the second time, she had something bugging her or whatever, and the vet finally, we're waiting, like we've got her in the room and we're waiting in the examination room with Zoe on the table for the vet to come in. And he comes in and he has met with her before, but I wasn't there. And you know me, I like to joke around. So he's examining her and he's playing with her, whatever. And he's like, and this little monkey. And I'm like, whoa. And they both like totally were like taken aback by my interruption. I'm like, wait a second. And I get real angry and I look at Sarah and I'm like, you told me this was a cat, not a monkey. And they both just start laughing hysterically.
That's awesome.
And Sarah always calls her like Zoe Bear. I'm like, look, it is not a bear and it is not a monkey. That is a cat.
Actually, to be fair, I do call Boo Bear.
She calls her Zoe Bear. I don't know where she gets that.
I don't know.
I call her Zoe Baloney.
I call Boo Bear because she's black, and sometimes she kind of stands there and looks at you like she's going to eat you,
like a bear might.
She kind of has a bear shape to her face, at least. But
to you,
again, I'm a fiction writer and I lie. But actually, I do believe that lie. It's a lie.
I need a catchphrase. I'm jealous of your catchphrase.
You created it for me. It was awesome.
So you got to come up with a good one for me. That's fitting. Yours is fitting.
I have about 20 going through my head.
Sure you do. I'm sure you do.
But with all the sex in this episode, I think we've had enough of the foul language. Okay. Yes. So next time, once again, we will be talking about secret societies. And as always, make sure to go to gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, Worldbuilders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us in this episode of the Worldbuilders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at Gardul.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike while the myth rolls high.